Now to our special on Liberation 75, a look at how the landmark anniversary was celebrated in extraordinary circumstances. It may not have been quite what islanders planned in practice, but that didn't detract from the spirit of the festivities, as Evelyn Jones reports.
The circumstances may have been unusual, but the sound was just as sweet as the flag was raised over St One's Parish Hall to mark the start of Jersey's Liberation celebrations. Reflections on freedom too, bearing the marks of the last 2 months.
We cannot forget it, and the youngsters mustn't forget it. I feel it's coming back with the youngsters, which is a good thing to come.
The street parade's more sparse perhaps, but closer to home for some.
Bob next door is the drum major for the Band of the Island of Jersey. You can hear the music, and at 11 o'clock he and our next door neighbour, who used to be in the Band of the Island of Jersey, are marching up and down. Then we're all going to sing Beautiful Jersey and have the Queen, and we have got wine and cake.
Well, you got to think of what the people of Jersey went through. All right, there's not many of them left, but we've still got to carry it on. Especially the younger generation must realise what the island went through for them to carry on a normal civil life.
Determined that no one was going to miss the party, in St Saviour, the constable and the quite aptly named Wandering Tea Company delivered afternoon tea to people's doors.
It is special, and it's just a pity we can't all be together, because 75th was going to be really, really special.
In Sark, the streets were quieter than usual, but the abundance of bunting ensured there was no less of a festive feel. In Guernsey too, street parties brought people together. Even the widest age gaps evaporated across garden walls.
Well, it's actually my neighbour Lynn's fault. We were talking socially distancing across the wall, and she said to me, "You're always talking to people in your front garden." And it just gave me the idea, and I went inside, made a flyer and posted it through everybody's door. And I had no idea whether anyone would even turn up and join in, but they did. So it's wonderful. A tribute to all the people we've lost, this dreadful situation, and all the people who survived it. So yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. I'm really stoked.
And those that did survive it still have vivid memories.
I was standing near the top of the slipway and saw these soldiers coming up, and as I say, giving out sweets to the children, which you hadn't seen for 5-6 years. It's amazing. I mean, the children didn't know what fruit was. I know my cousin had an orange given her, and she bit into it without feeling it. She didn't know what it was.
It's a lovely day for us because we were evacuated as children, and to come back to Guernsey 5 years after, it was wonderful.
We may not have been as free as we would have liked this Liberation Day, but what it did show is that despite our physical distance, our communities have never been closer.
Happy Liberation Day!
Evelyn Jones, ITV News.
Well, while those celebrations looked markedly different this year, so too did the official commemorations. The traditional ceremonies and speeches were replaced with pre-recorded material online and on local radio. Officials across Guernsey, Jersey and Sark hoping to bring islanders together in spirit, as Claire Burton reports.
This Liberation Day in Guernsey began like any other, with the sounding of the siren from Victoria Tower. The rest of the day was rather different. The Bailiff's speech pre-recorded and played out online and on the radio.
We remember what it was like for those who were here in the island, in occupied Guernsey. We remember the evacuees. It's important to remember that we always have to fight for our freedom. We must never take it for granted.
A message echoed by Her Majesty the Queen in an address delivered by the Lieutenant Governor.
As you remember the difficulties faced by islanders who lived through evacuation, enemy occupation and deportation during World War II, it is my sincere hope that you will still be able to come together as a community using technology.
And technology allowed a church service to reach a congregation of thousands across the bailiwick.
honour all those men and women of Guernsey who have personal memories of May 1945. It was the beginning of a long process of recovery and of a new normal.
In Jersey, the bailiff recorded his speech from the same balcony in the Royal Square used to address newly freed islanders 75 years ago, but with a message about the future as much as the past.
We can take this anniversary as an opportunity to ask ourselves searching questions. What is truly important to us? What do we value? What do we really need? What can we do without? What gives meaning to our lives? What do we want for our community?
And the Lieutenant Governor conveyed a similar sentiment from the Queen.
Today, you can celebrate not just a significant anniversary of your freedom, but also the building of a stronger, closer community which supports one another in a time of specific threat and in everyday island life.
One tradition that couldn't be missed, Beautiful Jersey, sung as always by Sadie LeSueur Renard.
Quand je pense à Jerry, la reine des îles.
Sark's ceremonial events took place on Sunday. The island was liberated a day after Guernsey and Jersey, and the Queen had a message for people here too.
At this increasingly challenging time, I was pleased to learn that you will still be commemorating and celebrating this significant anniversary with a small number of symbolic events.
I think it's particularly important whilst the people who were liberated are still alive, because it was such a huge event for them.
Across the Channel Islands, people paused to reflect, joined in memories, if not in person. Claire Burton, ITV News.
So Liberation 75 looked a little different than expected, with the majority of the traditional events played out online. Keelan Webster's been looking at how it all came together behind the scenes.
For the 65th, they sang. For the 70th, a special show. But for the 75th, a sombre silence. Liberation Day 2020 will be remembered as a socially distant celebration. Ordinarily, the seafront would be completely full, thousands of you lining the streets and then heading to Town Church for the annual service. But this year, we've turned to technology to commemorate the most important of days.
This 75th anniversary of Guernsey's liberation after years of occupation by the Nazi regime in Germany during the Second World War.
Many of the events you would have watched on Saturday have been pieced together during a frantic few weeks, recorded, edited and uploaded, all so we could still celebrate despite the obvious limitations.
If you think we were in the position of having organised all of the celebrations and expecting 30,000 people in town, and we were there, we'd been working on that for a good 18 months, suddenly to find that we were cancelling the whole of it, or cancelling is not a word I like to use, postpone. We couldn't go ahead with everything that we wanted to do. So the whole programme was turned on its head and sort of given to me as a challenge, OK, make as much virtual as you can.
As well as the church service, Guernsey's Lieutenant Governor recorded his message from the Queen, whilst the traditional laying of the wreath was carried out by the bailiff. Jersey took a similar approach, recording speeches from their Lieutenant Governor and bailiff, as well as the Dean, for you to all watch online. A day later, and it was the same story for those of you in Sark, with the Seigneur paying tribute 75 years on. Although this year's Liberation Day celebrations were unique, it's certainly one that'll never be forgotten.
We'll hopefully create a virtual album of all the photos that people sent on social media to show what it was like in lockdown, and it'll go down in history of how we spent the 75th.
For the last few months, technology has been so important, and once again it proved pivotal as we celebrated a Liberation Day unlike any other. Many will hope it's just a one-off, and rather than seeing events through our screens, next year we can be there in person, celebrating with each other, using technology for our own memories of the Channel Islands' most significant day. Keelan Webster, ITV News.
Now, of course, for those who lived through the occupation, Liberation Day is particularly poignant. Mick Ryle was 6 when Jersey was freed from German forces, while Molly B.A. in Guernsey was 14 at the time. They've been sharing their memories of life under Nazi rule.
I'd never seen so much excitement, I was overwhelmed really by it all, Didn't really understand it properly.
Mick was just 6 years old when Jersey was freed from German forces. He lived in Trinity and recalls one of his earliest memories at school.
2 Germans were sort of dragging this old man towards the school. They had to go past us. And all the boys started jeering at the Germans, thinking, oh, poor old man, just because he's had a few drinks. So we all were ordered in by the masters to get inside, out the way. It turned out the old man had a stroke or something like that, and the Germans were trying to get him home to save his life.
But not all Mick's memories of the Germans were nice ones. His dad worked on a farm and was keeping pigs on the quiet.
One day he started making a model plane, and he fixed it up so that the propeller made a noise as it turned in the wind. So he stuck it out on the pigsty, which is against the road, and of course he was hoping that as the Germans came up, which they did it regularly, daily almost, and they'd walk past the pigsty but not hear the pigs because of between the noise of their boots and the clacking of the aeroplane.
Sadly, though, the officers were tipped off by Mick's neighbours and the animals soon became German property. The fight for food was a part of occupation life that Molly also remembers vividly.
The Germans took 500 tons of potatoes from Guernsey people, and that was our rationing. And that's when we children used to scrounge and do an awful lot of, trying to steal, and with the help of the Guernsey men, when the Germans weren't looking.
Molly was 14 when Guernsey was liberated, and what sticks most in her mind is the sound of the island's unofficial national anthem.
A lady that started it at the seafront on Sanya Cherie, of course, and that's why it's very, very close to us, and always that's our song.
She also recalls that moment British troops landed in St. Peter Port.
We just ran and we got to them, and of course we were loving them, kissing them and crying with them. It was a case of just mad excitement.
Fond feelings of a time islanders hold dear. Although this 75th anniversary was very different to what Mick, Molly or any of us were expecting, they say it's important we continue to celebrate our freedom. Something we can all perhaps appreciate now more than ever. Anna Geary, ITV News.
Well, Liberation Day was also significant for Sir Richard Collas, who retired from his role as Guernsey's bailiff at the weekend. We've been speaking to him about his last Liberation Day as the island's judicial leader.
Liberation Day is the most important day of the year for Guernsey people. Whenever I think of a classic Liberation Day, when we have the commemoration, when we remember those who fought, those who suffered, we have the parade in town, it just brings back, it's almost like a kaleidoscope of memories. And it's like a montage that forms in my mind of all these different memories and all these different mental images I have, but always happy ones. What has been lovely is seeing all the bunting and the flags out around the island. The community spirit has come through, and people really are appreciating the effort of all those who are working so hard to keep Guernsey together. And in many ways that's what people did during the occupation. That's why we're here now, because people were prepared to serve selflessly for the common good. And I think if anything, it's brought the island together more closely this year than ever. What saddens me most about the 75th anniversary is that we'd been looking forward to it for so long. The 70th anniversary was a fantastic one, and I remember immediately after people saying, this has been wonderful, but we're going to make the 75th even bigger, even better. And all those plans, all those dreams, all those ideas we had have just had to be scrapped. The pandemic has ruined Liberation Day 2020. Laying the wreath on my own was so sad, because Liberation Day is all about association, it's about the social contacts, it's about meeting people, it's about rejoicing. And there I was, just on my own, early in the morning, laying the wreath in front of the memorial. Perhaps in a way it was appropriate, because it is always very solemn. And I always look at the memorial, and I look at the names on it, and I think each of those was a person. Each one had a father and mother. They maybe had a sweetheart, they maybe had a wife, they perhaps had children. And all of those people would have been mourning that one name. So it's always a very, very solemn occasion. And this year, there on my own, it was even more poignant than it would normally be.
And our dear Channel Islands are also to be freed.
Meanwhile, it was Jersey Bailiff's first Liberation Day. Timothy Lecoq was sworn in last October and had been looking forward to his Liberation Day address.
I would never have expected to have had my first Liberation Day particularly like this. I was looking forward to it very much indeed. It was the 75th, and I knew we were building up to making quite a celebration of it. For me, it's always fixed as being taking place in the bright sunshine, very colourful, lots of noise with lots of red, because the red robes of the court, and lots of celebration. It's got that feel to it, that joyous celebratory feel. But also it's the solemn and the traditional elements of it. The state sitting, the slave workers' service. We're doing our best to get those traditional elements well out to people in Jersey. Hopefully you'll take it from me that I'm rather too young to have been there at the time. But I have strong family connections with Liberation Day. My father served overseas. He was away from the island when the island was occupied, joined the Royal Navy, and he was part of Force 135 when they liberated the island. Came back and saw my grandparents, his parents, who he hadn't seen for 5 years. My mother was a child evacuee, and my grandparents were in Jersey during the occupation. So for me, I grew up with the occupation stories and the particular family stories. I would be very wary to make a direct comparison between the occupation, which is 5 years of occupation by a foreign power, to 5 or 6 weeks at the moment of lockdown to preserve the health of most of the people in the island. But there are, of course, parallels that one can definitely draw. We have to draw upon a lot of the same qualities that our forebears showed during the course of the occupation. Courage, fortitude, kindness, resilience, a toughness of spirit. And perhaps that helps us to reflect a bit and understand a little bit more how people in Jersey during the occupation felt.
Yeah, well, from the reflections to a look ahead now, here's Sophie with your weather forecast.
Making the most of the day. ITV Channel Islands weather. Sponsored by Shaw. Mobile, broadband and home phone.
Hello there. Well, I think the key theme of today has been the very strong winds gusting to around 50 miles per hour earlier this morning. High pressure is the reason for that. You can see the winds originating from the north, wrapping around that high pressure cell. And there's the possibility we might see the risk of a shower, in particular tomorrow morning. Further north, those showers are actually snow. So it is bitterly cold air that's heading in our direction. Now, today we saw highs of around 12 degrees. It felt much colder than that. And overnight tonight, we're looking at overnight lows of 7 degrees. Should remain dry, fair amount of cloud around, and the winds easing up from the strong force 6 or 7 to about a force 4 or 5. Then for tomorrow, very small risk of a shower first thing in the morning, but the winds easing up further to about a force 3 to 4. Hopefully some sunshine in the mix, but still extensive cloud cover, and we're looking at highs of around 12 degrees, but a UV index of 6 if we get the good sunshine. Now, the winds easing up gradually over the next 24 hours. The sea state will become slight to moderate, but we are going to see high tide times around 10:30 through to 11:15 tomorrow morning. And the sea temperature is so close to 13 degrees you can hardly call it. So the outlook is for dry, settled weather throughout the course of the week. At times, the wind speeds will really pick up from the northeast. That will impact our temperatures. We're looking at temperatures hovering about where they should be for this time of year, about 14 to 16 degrees later this week. Bye for now.
ITV Channel Islands weather, sponsored by Shore.
And that's the ITV News in the Channel Islands tonight. James is back at 10:30. In the meantime, we'll leave you with highlights of the 75th anniversary of Liberation Day with Jersey's Georgie Mottram singing Dame Vera Lynn to remember a Liberation Day in lockdown.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do. Till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know